Okay, so the next part of this workshop, which will go about 60 minutes, is on ideation. And the rationale for why we want to do this is that it's not about having a single good idea. It's all about having numerous ideas and then filtering through them or merging them or looking further and developing them that you actually get a good idea. Which is what these two quotes are saying. It's not really about inspiration, it's about perspiration. It's a lot of hard work in actually coming up with something that is decent. So just a general overview before doing ideation, which is this idea of this double diamond, which is kind of the design process that you may choose to take during this competition, where the first diamond is kind of what we were focusing on in the previous presentation, is this idea of that you need to find out what are the problems that you should be doing, where this idea is that you would perform a bunch of research, and from that research, you're collating numerous problems. It gets larger and larger such that you have now a whole list of problems. And then you have to determine, either based on your personal team goals, what you're capable of, or what is the most promising, which ones that you would choose to actually address. And then you get to this particular point, which is that you have a specific problem that you want to address, which we're kind of jumping to now, which is Stephen listed a whole bunch of problems that you could go towards addressing. Whereas what we're focusing on here is ideation, is now that you have a problem, is that you want to now come up with numerous ideas of potentially addressing that problem. And through these numerous ideas, eventually you will filter them down such that you would only prototype a couple of them that were worthwhile. So some general things. So depending on if you're doing double diamond or if you have a couple of problems that you think are the most promising, then what you would want to do is actually determine the specific population that is being affected by this, because you may be targeting a subset, not necessarily everyone that's getting a total artificial heart. What is the desired outcome? And this one can be quite hard, which is the actual core problem that wants to be addressed. And the three general ways of doing this is background research, observations, and interviews. To avoid doing artificial heart things, and because I'm more familiar with this, I'm going to give the example of urine leakage after prostate removal, where in this, the general idea is that you come up with this problem and it is the population is the person that just had their prostate removed. The desired outcome is to not have urine leakage, but the core problem at the moment is uncertain. So one of the things you do, either through presentations, textbooks, websites, and journals, is that you need to actually understand what is the core reason for the problem actually occurring. And also look at what are existing solutions, not just current ones in the market, but also solutions that are currently being developed, either through research or solutions that failed, so that you can actually understand why did they fail. Because what may seem like a good idea, there may be reasons why it isn't, or what were the key limitations that you then need to address them to be able to do. And then it's always good to understand who are the stakeholders, or who you're trying to address, or who you're competing against. So one idea of doing this needs exploration is the simple thing called root cause analysis, which is to help understand what is the primary cause. It's a simple thing, which is you ask 5 whys, or just as many whys, until you can identify the general consequences, the main problem, and causes. So for this example of urinary incontinence after prostate removal, the first why is, why does it occur? Well, it happens during the surgery. Why does it occur during the surgery? Well, it turns out that the nerves are damaged. You then ask, why are the nerves damaged? Well, the nerves are around the prostate that is to be removed. Then why can't it be avoided? Which it turns out they're small or hard to see, as in the surgeons cannot see the nerves, or they are damaged due to just the procedure itself, the stretching of them is damaged. And from this, you can then relook through the whys to identify that there was your key consequence, which is what you want to prevent, the cause, which is nerve damage, and the problem, that is occurring. The next sort of way to find out, which is, if you can, is to observe surgeries or product demos and all that. So it's from this that you're not being told what is happening, but you get to see it yourself. And seeing yourself is important because you're now seeing the raw information, not a filtered recollection of what is occurring. And from this, you are trying to just get the raw facts, to be curious, and to do it like you have not seen this before, which most of you will have not seen it before, because it is from that naive view that you will notice potential issues or question certain things. So depending on if it's possible or not, it would be great to actually view relevant surgeries. And if that is possible, to do it by different surgeons of different level of expertise or different types, to actually get a diverse understanding. If not possible, there's always YouTube to watch videos, or if there's existing devices, to watch product demos of these. Then once you've done this, you have some general ideas of background research. Observation is now that you have a bunch of questions that you want to ask industry, researchers, clinicians, and stuff. And from these, you want to be very open-ended and not direct them to the answer that you want, because then you're not getting any information from them. And the general idea is, because it's always hard to pay attention to both, is that you have two people, one asking questions and one documenting, or if you're allowed, having a voice recorder to look over this information. And at least in this example, there are numerous people that you could be able to interview, which are suppliers of existing solutions or potentially failed solutions, the users of these solutions. So in our case, it was, there are solutions in surgery, so surgeons, and there are solutions treating urinary incontinence, which is the patients. It's always good to talk to researchers, particularly clinicians, researchers that actually are doing surgeries as well. And it's good to be inspired by related fields, as in, this may have been solved somewhere else. So there are different surgeries which have nerve damage, and for instance, neurological surgeries where it's the surgeon's job to avoid the nerves, whereas in a prostate removal surgery, the job is to remove the cancer. So they're two very different aims. Maybe in these related fields, we can understand potential solutions or understand the need or causes better. So the idea is that once you've done all of these, is that you have a better idea of what this specific problem actually is. You have facts, what is the causes of it. You ideally got multiple perspectives, either through multiple observations, multiple different interviews, or reading different papers. You have different viewpoints of it. And you have the idea of what the root cause is. Then the idea with ideation is you want to do this thing called how might we. And what I mean by that is, from this example of root causes, is that it's identifying possible areas that we should ideate for. So, and they're at different levels. So there is how might we just treat urinary incontinence. So accept that it just happens and we want to just treat it at that point. Another one is that if it happens during surgery, could we avoid the surgery? Could we perform the surgery differently? Or if we go down further, is that if it's causing damage, how do we protect these nerves? Or going down to the actual core problems of it, it is, if they're small and hard to distinguish, well, how do we make them easier to see or detect? Or if they are stretched, how might we avoid or minimize this stretching? And each one of these how might we's are a spot to do brainstorming. It's no longer that you're brainstorming a solution for urinary incontinence after prostate removal, because that is too big now of a thing. Is these individual questions that are already large things to ideate on that places a focus. So when you are doing ideation, there are some do's and don'ts, which is, as highlighted before, it is not good to go for one idea. It is that you want to suspend all judgment and go for pure quantity and breadth of ideas. So it is number, it is wild ideas. You want to not judge people. You want to build off each other's ideas of instead of saying no, go and. Then more specifically, is you need to listen to other people's ideas, one, to build off them, but also to have one conversation at a time, because when you set up this ideation, you're in a team that has different viewpoints and all of them have different points of view that may be useful. Then finally is that you want to not spend too much time on one idea. It's about quantity. So you want to stay on topic, and this thing called headlining it is, instead of writing a paragraph on this very detailed solution, is you write it in a couple words or a sentence that is enough to remember what it means. And then if possible, you want to definitely capture all ideas. It's a bit hard in a virtual environment, but also to be visual. So draw diagrams in the ideation process, because this can help spur further ideas. Some general tips on how you might like to ideate is you may, instead of thinking of pure solutions, think of a potential thinking process. For instance, for us, we wanted to detect nerves. So a simple way of thinking of groups is actually just all the domains that you can detect. And then from each of these, you can now find the relevant sensors that exist. Or another is, if you've ever done risk assessments, is these are the standard ways that you avoid a problem. And these are good questions to ask, is how would you eliminate the issue? How could you substitute? Can you, administrative is like, how do you change the procedure of the surgery, or can you protect the nerves, or do you need to actually change the engineering device, sort of things. You don't always need to have ideas. You may ask questions in ideation for it, which are then for future ideation things. You now research these questions because you found them, and then from that newfound understanding, you would do it later. Ideas are to think outside your field. So these, for instance, in R1s, is this thought that in the show The Blacklist, there is this thing where you can dissolve anything with chemicals. So could you dissolve just the prostate instead of nerves? Is that a possible way? Or in the show called Scissor 7, there is a thing that can cut something specifically while avoiding everything else. Is that something possible? Or in another show, there is a thing that you could attach to a circular thing, like a nerve, and then it cuts everything around it. So could you just cut everything with it instead of the nerve? Or in other ones, sporting industry was the idea of, can you provide supplements to make the nerve stronger? Carpentry is, there's a device that can detect if your finger gets too close or touches the saw and it avoids it. Or in the beauty industry, there are things that stretch skin and they do it in a localized spot instead of broadly. Could this do it? Or latest technology, it's always good to go to conferences and find out or read about the latest things. Or merge ideas. This idea of maybe combining contrasting, which makes it easier to detect nerves, with a supplement that makes nerves stronger to prevent damage. And then this final point is that you do rounds of ideations. The idea is that you do a round of ideation. You potentially try to now research the questions you ask, cluster them, and in this clustering and research, you then have a new starting point for further ideation. Yeah. So to go about this process that we'll do today is that you need to have kind of two roles. Could be the same person, depending on how many people you have. One is the facilitator that ensures that the conversation keeps happening. It's all about quantity, not pausing conversation, that stays on topic, and that each idea is mentioned briefly, ensures that there's only one conversation at a time, and make sure that the conversation is balanced between everyone. Pass the parcel is that if you can't ensure that the conversation is balanced, then just go make sure that it goes around in a circle. So at least everyone gets a say, instead of trying to navigate social things to pick out people to speak. And then the scriber, the idea is that they capture all the ideas, potentially summarize them quickly, and if possible, it's a bit harder in this virtual environment, is draw diagrams of it. Yeah, so generally, at least the nicest way to do it is post-it notes. Post-it notes is because afterwards you can then group them up easily. And if you've done background research, is to take some relevant things like medical drawings models or an artificial heart, because you may start questioning things and want to look through this. But what we're using is Google Jamboards, which I will briefly go over here. The conundrum of not being able to see the top part. Yeah. So the idea is that it is acting like Post-it notes. So you have your core problem, general ideas of how you will do ideation. And then we have some existing Post-it notes. You just double click them and type your ideas into them, or you can just pick a Post-it note. Don't worry about color. Thing that is, unless you're thinking in terms of groups, it's best not to try to categorize while ideating, because you're then restricting yourself. So colors don't matter at this point. So you pick a color, state an idea, and then move it around is the general point. So that's basically how that goes. So the topic that we would be ideating on is, instead of a particular problem, because we are more just trying to get the principles and trying to focus on this thing of that you can be inspired by other fields, we're looking at more just a sub idea, which is what pumping technologies from other fields can be applied for artificial hearts. So where can you be inspired by? And what we're going to be doing is that we're going to have breakout rooms for each of the teams competing, and some spare breakout rooms for people that aren't in existing teams. And during these, you will implement or practice these basic ideas of ideating on this problem here. And during it, we'll have industry sponsors and organizing committee drop in and out, which you can then talk about either ideation, the particular topic, or if you just have general questions about total artificial hearts, that's your time to talk to them. We'll see how time goes, might go for 30 minutes or so. And then once that's all done, everyone's got an opportunity to ideate and talk with different people. We'll then head back to the main room to wrap up. So the way this is going to work is, if you're from any of these universities, then there should be breakout rooms labeled this from 1 to 7. And then there will be breakout rooms 8 and 9 if you don't fit into any of them. And the general way, admittedly it's a bit small, is there is a button on Zoom called breakout rooms. You will then press that, you'll see 10 rooms. They will be labeled based on these, and you just join the relevant one. Then once you're in that room, if you want to leave for any reason, you press leave room, and make sure you press the option that says leave breakout room, not leave meeting, or else you'll leave the entire Zoom call. Not really relevant for people, but more for the sponsors, is that you can, even within breakout rooms, jump between other breakout rooms by just joining them. If you do need to talk to the organizing committee, because we can't hear you in each breakout room, then in your Zoom, there is the option more. And if you press ask for help, that will notify us, and then we'll pop into your room. So if that makes sense, unless anyone has any comments, questions about that.